Uh, Sunday, July 8th, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So, yeah, it's the Sunday Q&A live stream. I want to talk about fiat money inflation today and also take your questions and try to answer them. I see there's quite a few of you here already. Sedona TV, Ned Yalco, who else? Prof. Grampy. Yeah, Prof. Grampy, I just started a little earlier than usual. It's really hot here. We've had a heat wave for quite a few weeks now. Uh, Billy is over here. He's come up for the live stream. Nice to see everyone. Anonymous, hi Anonymous. Yeah, Billy is a really good dog. Nice dog. I think most dogs are really nice anyway. Jim Rickards claimed Mario Draghi as his favorite central banker ever. Guess why? Because he was involved with Draghi when he was president of the Italian bank. Uh, well, yeah, LTCM invested. They bet a lot of money on what at the time before the euro came about. It was called convergence. So they were betting on the Italian yields getting lower and bond prices going higher. And I think what happened was then when you had the Russian debt crisis in '98, that kind of that trade kind of went sour, and LTCM, as usual, hedge funds are highly leveraged, and they lost their shirt. That's what happened. So, and that's why LTCM went down. I think Jim Rickards also was involved with the Iranian hostage crisis, which a lot of people think was done on purpose by the deep state to help Reagan during the for the 1980 elections. And a lot of people are suspicious about that because once Reagan was inaugurated, the hostages were freed. So it's a bit of a coincidence. And apparently, Jim Rickards was involved in that. So we've got quite a few people here already. So who have we got? We've got Oscar Sverd. Hi, Oscar. Anonymous, of course. Doug Bailey from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Nice to see you, Doug. Yankee Gluck. What about the 39 steps? I'm not sure what that means. Lorraine Weymouth. Hi, Lorraine. JJ, are you still selling Billy t-shirts? No, I will probably. I mean, I sold a lot of the Billy mugs, the coffee mugs. Not too many t-shirts. Maybe I'll put the Billy mugs back on sale. I can do that again, but I haven't. Anonymous, rumors of inverted yield curve. Well, you can't, it's not really a rumor. I mean, the curve is getting flatter, and all that does is hurts the banks because they fraudulently borrow short, and by borrowing short, they borrow in the short term and lend in the long term. Normally, you shouldn't be allowed to do that, to borrow for for a week and lend for 10 years. So, and how that works is that they keep rolling over that weekly loan, but it shouldn't be allowed to be done. In my opinion, it doesn't make sense. If you borrow for a week, you shouldn't be able to lend for more than a week, right? And that's what the banks do. Is LIBOR ending? Well, LIBOR is just a reference rate. Yeah, the Federal Reserve, and it's called the London Interbank Offered Rate. And it started out in the 60s with what's called the euro dollar. All the dollar that was accumulated offshore was traded through London. But yeah, the Federal Reserve and the New York banks, they want to start having a new reference rates. I don't think it's really that significant. It's just the rate that banks lend to each other. I know there's a lot of stuff related to LIBOR, all the scandals. Uh, Oleg Izyumenko. Hello, Mario and everyone. Hi, Oleg. Ital Wambamingo. Hello from Kokomo, Indiana. Hey, great to see you. Bulgaria follows you. Ned Yauko. As soon as Yata. JJ. Mario, what do you think about Robert Kiyosaki? Well, yeah. Is that the rich dad, poor dad? Yeah, he's very pro precious metals. Um, I think he's done really well. I think doesn't he advise people to borrow a lot of money to use the system? Um, he's done well with it. I personally am not. It's not the kind of strategy that I like because it comes to a point if you borrow too much, you could get in trouble. But he's succeeded in it, so you know, good luck to him. But he also talks about how he first got into gold when he was in Vietnam fighting the Vietnam War, and how he's accumulated gold and silver since then, in drips and drabs or dollar cost averaging. Uh, the, the Cypress one from Mesa, Arizona. Hi, Cypress, the Cypress tree one. Sorry. Gur Olgi, what is your gut feeling telling you about when it's all collapse? Well, the only thing about my gut feeling about that is that it will happen, but very difficult to predict when. What do you think about EOS pedophile deep state connections? Sunus Yatta. I think that's all just like fabrication by someone on YouTube. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to give him the time of the day. I actually think, it's ridiculous. It's just someone who has a grudge. Um, the pro, the I think the project and the EOS community itself is above that. Sedona TV, hi Sedona TV, anonymous, thanks. And how do banks buying bonds affect stocks or commodities? Well, the banks buying bonds, what that does is that lowers uh, that increases bond prices because they're buying it. That lowers yields or interest rates, and that gives a signal that there's no inflation. But we know that is like artificial, right? And that's how they've been able to keep commodities and bonds and bond prices. While commodities, they've been able to keep it low, right? And they've been able to keep bond prices high, interest rates low, and stocks high. A lot of times, stock prices are discounted through a forward discount, and if the interest rate is lower, that discounts into a higher stock price. So that's how they do it. Yeah, I mean, there is good debt. That's Kiyosaki. But you got to make sure that you can service that debt because if you can't, you could get into trouble. I mean, I have to admit, back in the mid 90s when we started our family, we sold a small flat or apartment we lived in and we bought a house and I took a mortgage. And the house we bought went up a lot in value, and I wouldn't be in the position I am if I hadn't taken that mortgage. But that's the way it goes. But personally, right now, I don't want to have too much debt. Jeff 43, hi Mary. Why do Royal Mint still produce new gold coins that are available to buy at a small premium to spot when central banks are so keen to keep the public away from purchasing gold? Well, the Royal Mint is a separate entity from the Bank of England, for example. I've noticed that they're encouraging people to store their gold at the Royal Mint. So I think it would be obvious if they stopped minting the coins, and that's why they do it. Their premiums, yeah, they're not bad. I haven't looked lately, but yeah, so that's what happens, and but I wouldn't buy it and store it with them. So I would say, keep buying from them if their premium is lower than the dealers, and if it's a good premium. I bought from the Royal Mint before, years ago. Expat ran, when ETFs come into crypto, prices will soar. Yeah, some people do think that could happen. Uh, Delanzo Johnson, will it be wise to hold the Russia and the Chinese currency since they're backed by gold? Uh, I opened an account with a Bank of China in London a few years ago, and I had some Chinese yuan. I don't have it anymore. I have the account. Uh, I don't think it's necessary to hold those currencies to benefit from that. Might as well just hold the gold. Sunu's Yata, do you think it's true that there's less silver than there is gold on the surface of the earth? Yeah, definitely, because all the gold, 99% of the gold that's ever been mined is still above ground. Uh, Gold is not consumed. It's kept for jewelry, while silver is consumed in industry. So yeah, there's probably not as much gold as there is silver. Uh, Penn Meister, can you comment on the 100-fold increase in gold and silver futures volume for the last 10 days? It's visible on that Dania XAG USD chart. Well, that's the silver chart. Uh, you'd need to check on. I would check on COMEX. I have used NetDania, but you need to see where NetDania is getting its data from. I would go on COMEX, which is on the CME exchange on the website, and you can check the volume, the silver volume, to see if it's real. They must have done something with the data that made it look a bit wonky or out of whack. So I think NetDania has made a mistake. Anonymous, thanks again. How does that affect specific sectors or specific commodities instead? Well, the fact that interest rates are low, and the central banks and economists keep talking about deflation. It kind of make investors complacent, and they don't think they need to own hard assets. That's why it keeps the prices low. And within the commodity sectors, there's different stories based on supply and demand, I would say. Prof. Grampy, where do you feel the price of silver should be? What should the silver gold ratio really be? Well, if we go back to 1980, the price of oil got up to $40 and silver is at 50. So now oil is almost at 80 and silver is at 17. So I would say it should be at least 50, if not 100. So that's how, I think silver is completely undervalued, but we know why. Because silver is money, and the central banks and the bullion banks, they need to keep it artificially low, just like they keep interest rates artificially low. And we know that because they've done it through QE. So no one can say that they haven't manipulated interest rates, and that brings down the price of commodities, especially the monetary ones. They also manipulate the price lower on COMEX and LBMA. Lee Jenkins, coins not being interest bearing. Well, nothing is interest bearing unless you lend it. So there you go. Federal Reserve notes don't bear interest. The US Treasuries bear interest because they're a loan, right? But the paper money that you have in your wallet doesn't bear any interest. Will Italy go back to the lira? Yeah, probably. Uh, Probably, I would say. In the next 10 years, I think we'll see the lira come back. I think the Europeans tried the Latin monetary union in the 1800s. That didn't really last too long. Howard Kuhlman, small amount of gold is consumed, non-recoverable. Yeah, and that's why I said 99%. Yeah, there is some gold that is consumed, but not many, not much. NASDAQ SE, why don't you become a high-level trader? Is it difficult? Well, I have traded in the past when I was still working in the city uh, for my account. And at the same time, I was working, broking and servicing clients. And I did well, but it's hard. It's hard. And I did, yeah, I did well, but it's like really difficult, I think, in my opinion. If you're going to be a trader, it's going to be 24/7. And yeah, I don't really want the hassle. It's yeah, you can make a lot of money, but you can lose a lot of money as well. I think what I'm doing now, I'm happy with, like longer term investing, and yeah. Howard Kuhlman, is Italy still trying to leave the euro? What do you mean by Italy? I mean, Italy has a new government in the last few month or so. I don't think the present government, even though they're a populist government, as they're called, they're not looking to leave the euro. Uh, and they're not even looking to leave the European Union, which is a completely different thing. Many people don't realize the euro and the European Union are not the same. The UK is still part of the European Union, but has never had the euro as a currency. D-Mitch, don't you think as part of people's education, they should be learning about what money is and how to manage finances over time? Why doesn't anyone voice this publicly, especially after so many crises? Well, I agree with you 150%. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I make my videos to try to teach people about it. Of course they do. But the system doesn't want to do that. The system wants to keep people indebted. They want to keep people borrowing money because if people don't, it can't function because the fiat money system is based on debt. So we have to keep bringing the younger people and encouraging them to spend beyond their means. Uh, Daryl Lowry, I'm seeing that asset and equity price inflation is being used as a substitute for declining real wages. What do you see? Well, of course, it has. It's helped the 1%, and that's where the money is flowing right now. But it hasn't helped the general public. But one day that's going to flow into real goods. I think we are starting to see that with the oil price, even though they're trying to keep it down as much as possible. Penmeister, dude, elephant in the room here. The futures XAG USD volume skyrocketed. I verified it's not a glitch with NetData. It's exclusively tier one market maker data. Well, futures volume, you can only get it from an exchange, Penmeister. It's not a market makers they don't publicize their volume, and market makers usually work on the over the counter market. So for futures volume, the main futures for silver is the CME or COMEX. Whatever net Danian is giving, I don't know what it is, but it's not futures. It would be spot price, maybe the spot, but I don't see why the market makers, the bullion banks, would be publicizing how much they trade. So I don't know. I haven't looked into net Dania. I don't use it for the price. Child trafficking. Have you heard something about the gold-backed U.S. Treasury notes? No, I haven't. Haven't heard about that. Eurozone is dead. Well, actually, if you look at the statistics, the Eurozone, which is the countries that use the euro, they actually have almost a balanced budget. Their GDP is actually better than the US if you discount the budget deficits. So I don't know about the Eurozone being dead, even though I'm not saying it's a great economic area. Moni Jaber, who do you prefer, Trump or Ron Paul as president? Well, that's an easy one. Ron Paul every day of the week. Zalatiki, TSA airports, TXA silver coins, face value of coin on silver spot price. A US dollar bill in your pocket is earning a negative interest rate. That's right. Or anywhere, or even in the bank, with the interest they give you. It's a mug's game. Just a view on German banks refusing to return gold depositors' gold. Well, I made a video yesterday about it. So, yeah, that's just shows that there's a lot of demand for physical gold, and they're trying to stop people from taking the gold out. It shows that gold is important, because if it wasn't important, why would they not be giving customers their physical gold? And it just goes to show that there's a lot of demand for the physical stuff, but the central banks hate that. So, and that's probably why the price has been taken down, to discourage that. KVJKXZZ. Would you say you are an Austrian school economist? Yeah, definitely. I think the main difference is that the Keynesians, they espouse government intervention, and they don't trust the markets, and they want the government to use monetary and fiscal policy to affect the economy. And I don't agree with that. I think the economy should be left to the market, and we should have small government, and yeah. So I do favor the Austrian school, laissez-faire economics. Is there, Anonymous, is there any way to see what central bankers are trading? Uh, Not really. They're not transparent at all. And I think they do a lot of their trading through the Bank for International Settlements, which is their bank. And the Bank for International Settlements is like a sovereign entity, and not even regulators in any country can look at what they do. So good luck. You're not going to see anything from them, unfortunately. Uh, Hans Holtz, I think Trump is a Jesus. Trump equals Jesus. Uh, Jeff 43, worth mentioning that gold coins in the UK are free of capital gains tax. I don't think this is the case in most of the countries. Shame we have to pay VAT on silver coins. Yeah, Jeff, the thing about the UK, it's only sovereigns and gold coins with, of the realm. So, for example, other gold coins like Krugerrands, or US gold coins, or maple leafs, they are liable to capital gains tax, but not British coins with the Queen's head on it. Like sovereigns, they're not. They're considered, like a sovereign is considered legally £1, even though it's worth a lot more. So you're right about that. No, it is a shame about silver. There are ways to buy silver without VAT. I guess there's some websites in Germany that you can buy silver without VAT. Gary still, hi Mario. Would you advise picking up good quality stocks for bargain prices after the crash? Well, not only stocks, but any kind of asset, if that has been beaten down. Yeah, it's always a good time if you have the cash, and if you're not scared to dip your feet in the water, so to speak. Why Nasdaq C? Why does Wall Street hate gold? Well, because gold is anti-paper, and Wall Street thrives on paper, fiat money, trading. You know, gold is like honest money. That's why. Richard Langelotti, thanks for talking about Harry Dent in some recent videos. I wasn't sure how to deal with his recommendation. I think he's also wrong about staying away from Disney and Coca-Cola stock. Daryl Lowry, thanks for what you do. I start my day by watching your channel. Excellent insight analysis. Again, thanks. Well, thanks for the feedback. At least I know that, you know, it's good to know that. Richard Langelotti, there's more than one fat bastard in the central banking system. Who is that, Richard? I think the one I talk about is the guy from the BIS, the Mexican general manager. I don't know who's the other one. Yeah, Peter Schiff. I haven't listened to him lately, but yeah, he's been right about things in the past. I like his general idea. He's a proponent of the Austrian school. Uh, why is Trump? Why Trump is going after Amazon? Is it hustle to free more? Is it? Well, I think the reason he's going for Amazon is that Amazon they've exploited the tax system. You know, they pay very little tax, but only because they've gotten the best lawyers and accountants. So I think he should really go after the system, but then he'd be going after all the hedge funds, probably after himself, because a lot of these wealthy individuals who have hedge funds in New York or in London, it's all offshore, and that's what Amazon has done. David Marco, can you explain the difference between allocated and unallocated, and what is fractionally held in an allocated form? Well, basically, allocated means that if you buy gold or silver allocated on the OBMA, it means that there's a bar there that belongs to you. They allocate that bar, and you can, you know, you should be able to verify that bar. And then unallocated, it means that you don't have claim to a bar, and if you do want to change it to allocated, it will cost you. And that's how they hypothecate it or make it. You know, the fractional reserve is by doing unallocated. That basically means there is just paper gold. That's what it means. But allocated is really physical. But you could still argue that it's paper because you haven't really taken delivery, but you do have the claim to the physical. And unallocated, you have claim to nothing. It's just a claim to the price. Uh, oh, hi, Randall. Yeah, I'm having a nice Sunday. Really hot here, but yeah, we went out for lunch earlier. So yeah, I played a little bit of golf this morning. Just a quick round, just to play, nothing serious. Uh, Two, Manolo. Three, what economic policies would you implement if you're president? Well, I would abolish the Federal Reserve. I would liquidate the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and I would put the United States back on gold standard that it should be. I would try to decrease government spending massively. I would try to wean out the whole system from the welfare state, Social Security, and Medicare. And I would try to do nothing really, like what Ron Paul proposes. You know, shrink the size of government massively. That's what I would do. I would try to do nothing really. If anything, I'd try to unwind the whole, you know, Leviathan state that not only the U.S. has, but the rest of the West has. Who could revoke the sovereignty of the BIS? Well, the founding members, the countries like France, Germany, uh, the United Kingdom, I think the Netherlands, the US, all the countries that signed the treaty in 1930 at The Hague, they would have to sign a treaty abolishing it. But yeah, don't hold your breath. I mean, that should be something that I'd like to see Ron Paul talk about. He talks a lot about the Fed, but never about the BIS. Uh, Hugo, me too. Can you explain what a denationalization of money, privatization? Uh, well, I think denationalization, what they mean is that, there's a free market in money, unlike what we have now, where we have fiat money by decree or by law for each country. So the U.S. Constitution, all they say is that what kind of money the Congress and the government can accept, and that it's gold and silver. So it might sound nationalized, but it's not. It's the free market money. The Cypress Tree one. Do you trade U.S. equities like myself? I have traded U.S. equities. At the moment, I'm not trading them. JJ, what do you think about the rich using corporations as pass-through entities? Seems like all reward with no risk for the rich. Well, the rich, they aside from using corporations, they can use trusts, they can use offshore companies. Yeah, the system allows for it. Uh, I personally think, yeah, we shouldn't have corporations. We should just have very small tax, almost no taxation, small government, and the individual should be able to start a business and not have to form a corporation. And there's Orsted. Why has correlation between oil and dollar changed since May? They have been positively correlated. Well, if you look at up until 2008, from 2002, oil went up, like you said, from like up to $150, and the dollar went down. And right now, yeah, dollar's going up, and the dollar's going, and the oil price is going down as well. Yeah, it is. Sometimes markets, the correlations don't really happen all the time. But I think the dollar is actually going down in terms of oil. Maybe not in terms of other fiat currencies, but dollar. The oil price has gone up about 25% against the dollar in the last 6 months. But yeah, the dollar has stayed fairly strong against other currencies. T. Hambone, thoughts on Hecla mining? Yeah, Hecla mining is like a good way to speculate on silver. It's one of the oldest listed silver mining companies on the U.S. I think it's on the NYSC. So yeah, it would be a good way to speculate on the price of silver going up. Eric, oh, stupid question. If there is an estimated total of 170,000 tons of gold, how much of it is actual currency versus not being used to stabilize money? Well, none of it is currency because gold has been taken away from the system since, well, in the US since 1933, in Europe since 1914, I would argue. But I think the central banks, they only hold about 30,000 to 35,000 tons of that. So yeah. So yeah, they use the paper and the 35,000 tons that they have to manipulate the price. William Wiltrack, do you see cryptocurrency as a legitimate alternative to fiat and a bellwether to the economic digital revolution? Yeah, I do actually. There's it's not you some people argue that it's like a fiat Ponzi and stuff, but I would argue that at least it's not forced on anyone and it's kind of a free market currency. So yeah, I think it has a leg up on government money, but I do favor precious metals still, even though I do have some cryptos. Uh, Thank you, Cypress Tree One, for the super chat donation. Mehmet Bayat Bayarktar, Monaco 64. You talk trash. All right. Uh, Tell me why, Mehmet. Uh, Tell me why you think I talk trash, and I'll try to respond. Kathleen Smith, what do you think about NATO and Trump demanding Europe pay its fair share? What do you think NATO was? Why do you think NATO wasn't dismantled after the fall of the Soviet Union? Wow, that's a good question. Bush Senior and Gorbachev, they met, and the deal was not written on paper, but the Russians did their, you know, they respected their side of the deal. They withdrew from the Warsaw Pact countries. Bush said that NATO wouldn't expand eastwards, and it did. So yeah, I don't think NATO should be around anymore. World War II was over, 1945. We don't need NATO anymore, and I really don't think Russia is a threat, personally. Mehmet Bayaktar, JJ, he just talked trash to take donation for profit. Well, I took a $2 donation super chat. Uh, well, let me explain to you, Bayaktar, whatever your name is, Mehmet. Um, I'm taking my time here to talk to you guys, answer questions. I'm not asking for anything, but if people want to donate, they can. And and if you don't want to be here, you don't, you can just leave. But if you have any questions, I will answer your questions, and I won't ask for any money. Anonymous Monaco, are there any famous platinum stocks? No, I don't know. You'd need to check that. I mean, it could be easy to find Google platinum stocks. I don't really follow platinum too much. Two Manolo 3. Recently in Cuba, people can start companies, but these companies need to stay small so that they do not become more powerful than the state, like in the West. Well, that's true. I agree with you. The corporations in the West, they pay off the politicians, and a lot of the rules and regulations in the West, in the UK included, they punish the small companies, and the big corporations, uh, they do whatever they want. I agree. So there's not much difference, I guess, between Cuba and the West, even though we're told that it is different. Richard Langelotti, thank you for the donation. Yeah, thank you. I don't think Mehmet understands how value works in interaction, a free market. If I was holding a gun to everyone's head and making them donate to me, yeah, that would be wrong. And that's what government does, Mehmet. All right. I think you've left anyway. Thank you, Daryl. There you go. Kathleen Smith, I think when Europe and US goes bankrupt, NATO infrastructure in place, an international military to be there for IMF or the BIS to use to enforce policies. Well, let's hope not. I mean, let's hope if the Europe and the US go bankrupt, all these you know, institutions go along with it. Uh, you know, we don't need NATO, really, personally. That's what I think. Roberto Montoya, don't let haters bother you. Well, they don't bother me, but I do like to explain, you know, things. You know, so I don't consider them haters. They're just like misguided. Thank you, Patrick. Let's see. The Libra fraudster. What do you know about the symbolism on British currency? Apparently, the harp on the tails side of the 1p coin is a lizard. Yeah, I haven't looked into that. Interesting. But yeah, that's on the coin. On the notes, they still keep the promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of 10, 20, or £5. And there's nothing that they pay. The Bank of England says that it means that you can ask for a new note. I think that's really misleading. Thank you, Gear Olgi, for the Norwegian kronas. Uh, thanks for good info, and to the viewers who have good questions. Oh, you're welcome. Over here, I viewed a short and very interesting video on urban stacker on rhodium, a noble metal, which is a new term to me. Interesting about the potential use in electronics. Yeah, noble metals are precious metals are noble. I think the Germans call them noble metals. They call them Edelmetall. So like gold, all the precious metals are also noble. Richard Langelotti, I think Billy is dreaming about swing trading dog eat treat futures. Yeah, he's fast asleep. Eric, with Brazil in its current political turmoil, do you think it's delaying the predicted BRICS economic bloc overtaking? Yeah, I think there is kind of an American agenda there. I know because all Brazilian governments have always been corrupt. The labor government we had in Brazil is nothing different. But I think there's like there's an America agenda behind that. So yeah, they're trying to disrupt Brazil. Hopefully, Brazil will stand strong, and maybe I think there are elections this year in October, so we'll have to see. And I think Lula is running again. Not that I like Lula or anyone. I don't like politicians, but yeah. Jesse James, is inflation the monetary mechanism or a cultural phenomenon? Uh, Inflation is always a monetary phenomenon. It's always monetary. It's too much money chasing too few goods. How can that happen? It can happen under a free market gold standard. It happened locally in California during the gold rush. The prices in the San Francisco area went up a lot, but overall, it didn't affect the rest of the country. But with paper money, it's too much money being printed. It creates chasing too few goods. It's just a law of supply and demand. You get too much money chasing too few goods. The money becomes worth less than all the goods. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do. You hear a lot in the mainstream. Oh, the price of airline tickets went up, and that's made inflation go up. No, that's the consequence of inflation. They're trying to fool you into thinking that inflation is created by businessmen, but no, it's created by the bankers when they issue too much money out of thin air. Roberto Montoya, if you had to guess from where is going to come the next black swan that will create the domino effect for the market reset, that's a good question and difficult to answer. It will probably come from somewhere we haven't really looked into. That's why it will be a black swan. I heard a story last week about Indian banks being more trouble than Italian banks. So you never know. It could be from India, but I don't think so. New Zealand gold. When he says you talk trash, does he mean you talk about the U.S. dollar? Probably, or any fiat currency, I guess. Uh, Manolo 3, will expensive oil crash the economy? It could, even though the U.S. benefits a lot from higher oil prices. I heard that in Texas, there's a lot of the economy is doing well because of oil, but I think Trump is trying to use it as a political thing because everyone has to drive. A lot of people drive cars, so he's trying to. So it might slow down the economy, and it could crash the economy, I guess. But it's not black and white. MRJI78. Hi, Mario. When the donation shows on screen, it scrolls the chat down to the bottom, so you miss lots of questions posted. You answered question from William Wiltrack, then it skipped post. All right, I didn't see that. Yeah, I try to keep up with all the questions. David Marco, do you think Deutsche Bank is positioning itself for a bankruptcy bail-in as evidence they are refusing delivery of gold to large customers? Maybe, but I've heard of other banks refusing delivery of gold. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're positioning themselves for bankruptcy. And we don't really know if it's Deutsche Bank. I assumed in my video that it could be Deutsche Bank because Andrew Maguire said it was a German bank, but it could be another German bank. Thank you, Jeff43, for the super chat donation. Richard, but how when corporations own the government? Well, the way they own governments, corporations, is through the political donations. That's how they do it. Even the U.S. Supreme Court a few years ago, because I think American individuals, they can only donate a certain amount for elections, for campaigns, like $2,300. I might be a bit more or less. But a few years ago, the Supreme Court in the U.S. ruled that corporations can donate unlimited amounts to political campaigns. So that's how they do it. They buy the politicians. They don't call it that. They call it lobbying, right? They call it lobbying. That's the euphemism for corruption. It's the same thing in the UK. What else have we got here? Hi, Juhas Peter. Nice to see you here. Hi, Ty Gunny. KVJQXZZ. Credit and stout failure in 1930 halted the system in a single failed bank transfer. Yeah, that was what triggered the bank. The banking crisis in the early 30s was the Austrian bank Credit Anstalt. You're right. And I think a lot of the German, and that affected the German banks. The German banks borrowed a lot of money from the American banks. So it was like a domino effect, and it would happen today as well. You go, me too. Milton Friedman said, this is in Portuguese, so I'll translate. Milton Friedman said that the reason for the 1929 crash was trade wars. Friedrich Hayek said it was because of the Fed. Yeah, I think the trade wars did not cause the Great Depression. I think it was the money printing by the Fed in the 20s, the loose monetary policy that created the boom of the 20s. And one of the reasons for that was that the U.S. Fed was helping keep the pound from declining, so they kept printing money to sustain the pound. Yeah, so I think trade wars are just a symptom of the boom, but they don't really cause the depression. MRJ I-78, could you do a video on Russia, the ruble, and their gold? I believe the recent positionings on their and other events are covert attempts to provoke them into a war. Could be what the US needs to wipe out their debt. Could be. I will, yeah, Russia's an interesting country. Old world order. Do you think they will keep enough liquidity and life in the system for people in the city to survive with food deliveries, ATMs, etc., or they'll let us perish under Jap boots in the long winter? Well, the just-in-time delivery depends a lot on credit, doesn't it? If the credit system fails, yeah, it could get ugly. That's what almost happened in '08. That's why we need a new system. Over here, Mary, did you view the Greg Hunter and Greg Minorino today? Bluntly, bluntly bleak worldwide economic future. The markets return to true value, real value, painful already, beginning of a war. I didn't listen to it, no, but yeah, I agree. I think paper assets are highly overvalued against real things. When it will happen, I don't know. Roberto Montoya, after the economy reset, what countries will benefit and who will suffer? I don't think all countries will suffer. I think some individuals will benefit from it and some won't. In the long term, I think it can only be a good thing because, like a forest, sometimes a forest fire is good for the forest. And I think we haven't had a forest fire because, since Greenspan came to power in the late '80s, central bankers keep bailing the system out. So we do need one. And every country will suffer, I think. Muaz Mehdi, how old are you? 53, Muaz. Uh, Alexander, if anything goes wrong with the economy, all normies will blame Trump and his policies. Well, yeah, I mean, people don't do their homework. They don't look at history. They don't look at the system. They're going to blame Brexit as well in the UK, and they're just scapegoats. Yeah, they won't look at the fact, that we are in the fiat money system, and that the central banks and the governments have borrowed too much money. You go, me too. You travel a lot. In your opinion, what's the best country to live? Well, I have lived in a few countries. I haven't been here in the UK for the last 25 years. I would say Switzerland is probably the best country I've lived in, and it's still a really nice country. I think England is a nice country as well. Jane, I heard about this volume spike on NetDania. NetDania is just they only provide price information. I told the person who asked about this earlier about the silver volume. If you really want to check silver volume, go to the COMEX website. Yeah, hi Andrea. I will listen to that Greg Hunter Manarino interview. I haven't had the chance yet to do it. So I'll take a few more questions. We're getting up to the hour mark, and I'll end the live stream. I'd like to thank everyone for participating, for using the super chat. I really appreciate it, and for the really good questions. VK, maybe a stupid question. Can you please tell banks in Canada have most exposure to bad loans? Do you mean if the Canadian banks are the worst ones? I don't know, but I would say the Canadian banks are in the same boat as the other banks in the West. I haven't really looked closely at the Canadian banks. I wouldn't trust any of the banks. Jeff 43, as an investor of UK stocks, I read nearly every RNS each morning, and it feels like the UK is actually in a recession now. Well, I've said before that I think the UK has been in a recession for a decade. The only reason the GDP is positive is because the government has been running, really big deficits for the last 10 years. I know it's gone down recently, the deficit, but it's still like almost 2%. And the latest GDP number was 1.2. Patrick, hey Mario, even the World Cup trophy is made of gold. Well, supposedly, I think it's just gold plated. I don't think it's solid gold, but yeah. Yeah, people, when they win a competition in the Olympics, they get a gold medal, right? They don't get a dollar medal or a Fiat medal. Oh, you're welcome, Roberto Montoya. You go, me too. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Vance, get the money changers out of the temple. Yeah, I mean, Jesus, like, was the only time he got angry, wasn't it? Was with the money changers. It goes to show you. Uh, Mima, yeah, SDR is a currency that the sovereign countries use, but I don't think it's gonna. It has a future. Hey, Bitcoin Ben, thank you for the donation. Have a drink on me, my friend. Yeah, I have enjoyed my weekend. I really enjoyed your wife's interview with you. It was really great to to learn more about you, and I think you're doing a great job. Keep it up, and yeah, thanks a lot. Uh, Shaving cream is the new gold standard. How much tar and feathers should I buy for the government? Well, loads, I would say. Great. So everyone, I'll just answer one more question. Jew has Peter, what languages do you speak? Well, my mother tongue is Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, if you want to call it that. I speak English, French, Italian, and a bit of German. So about 5. So there you go. Thanks, everyone. Billy is asleep, but he says hi. And I wish you all a great rest of the weekend. If you're in the States, I guess if you're in Asia, it's almost Monday already. So, and thanks a lot for showing up and participating. Really appreciate it. My next live stream will probably be Wednesday, but I will let you guys know in my next few videos. Okay. And thanks a lot. Take care. Goodbye.